Hey, GLP-1 plus size community. Before we jump into the podcast, please take the time to leave us a 5-star review on whatever audio platform you're listening to the podcast on. Share your story and how the podcast has helped you. This will help us get referred up in the audio platform so that we can reach more people that need our help. Our support and guidance from our doctors. Help us get loud and change things.
Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.
Want the fastest working GLP-1? For half the price, Ro now offers FDA-approved weight loss injections cheaper. With results you can see faster. Lose 15% of your weight with the formula from Eli Lilly that hits not one, but 2 hormones to curb hunger and nausea. Weight loss faster. Confidence higher. Price cheaper. See if you qualify at ro.co/TV.
Welcome to the Plus
Hi.
Size Podcast.
Doing?
Hey, Kat.
Hey.
How you doing? How's your day been?
It's been all right.
Yeah.
It's been all right. It's cold. It's cold everywhere, I think, in the country right now.
Yes.
Everyone's
really cold.
Did you?
This
So
will
right now
probably
we're
air in
recording
February.
during the cold snap. You what?
I think this will air in February.
Yeah. So
It'll
we're
still be cold.
recording in January, cold snap. And the
Yeah.
craziest thing was seeing snow on the beach in Destin on the news.
That was
That's
crazy, right?
wild.
We're actually going there on vacation. So that's weird.
Wild.
It is wild. I don't know. Like, and then
Crazy.
like, yeah, in Florida in general, they had like many inches of snow, you know?
Crazy. Snow went by my area of Atlanta this time, but 2 weeks ago, we got it.
We got snow
Lost
before.
power and everything.
Yeah, it was, and then I think we were really hoping for, because we all know I have a kiddo, and he was like all about like, let's have some snowball fights and stuff. And then we got gypped. It just got freezing with no snow. What's up with that?
That's it. Yeah. What's up with that?
Yeah, right. Anyway,
So
we have a lovely show this evening. But if you are new here, we'll do quick intros for me and Kat. My name's Kim. I've had obesity for as long as I can remember. My first diet was when I was 8. It was Weight Watchers. I have been on a GLP-1 for 2.5 years now, and I've lost 110 pounds. It's the most weight I've ever been able to lose. Having the food noise be off and having control over what I eat and what I do, and just having control. I feel like that's the biggest thing. Like, not necessarily control the size of my body, because I'm not skinny, right? But I'm more in control of my health. And so there's been a lot of emotional healing. And so we talk about all things that kind of encompass health on this journey, from the mental piece to the physical piece to the biggest questions that we have when we get started, which is, what do we eat, right? Or what do I do? Or how do I move? Or should I exercise? What kind should I do? The answer is yes, but focus on strength training, but whatever makes you happy. But that's what we do. And we bring on doctors and we bring on community members to tell their story, because we are trying to fight the bias. You know what I mean? We're trying to fight the misinformation with education. And we're glad to have you along this journey with us. And we appreciate you. If you are one of our paid subscribers and you do get bonus content and content early, we love you. Thank you for helping us out. It does take a lot to produce this show. So we're so thankful.
Mhm.
Kat, can you give me a quick rundown of who you are and what you're doing for our new people? Because we get new people all the time.
Hi, new people. I'm
Hey.
Kat. I'm Kat Carter. You can follow me on the show socials, Kat Carter 7. Back on the TikTok and Mrs. Kat Carter on the IG.
Yeah.
My antics and ignorance.
Kat Carter.
Yes, yes. I've been on a GLP-1 the same amount of time as you, I think, 2022.
Yep.
Originally lost 70 pounds, but I have hit that perimenopause as hell wall. So I go up and down now. I'm currently looking for something else, but maybe
I get it.
it's, in short, I am one of those slow responders, but I also always still kind of have my food noise. It breaks through. I have done Overeaters Anonymous in the past because I have BED as well. But I feel like it definitely still kind of sits right here with me. So I have to be still a little bit more structured with the times and then how I'm eating, so I still don't have any boo-boos.
No such thing as boo-boos.
Yeah, you're right,
We
but
talked about it a
structural.
lot, and we'll talk about it more today. Kat is a
Yeah.
very big exerciser. She's always really
I
been into
exercise a
fitness,
lot. Yeah.
and we know that a lot of times people that exercise more, the doctors have told us they're more hungry, because you need to eat more. So,
I love it so much.
yeah.
If you follow me, there's some of the videos that I do make of my mood being fixed quick, fast, and in a hurry. There have been times that okay, so spin is my drug of choice, right? This is my cycle bar that I go to. I'll make it really quick. I have made videos of me like crying on the way in just because I'm having a shitty morning or a bad morning or I'm stressed out. And as soon as I'm out of class, let's go do some shit now. Let's go make it happen.
Yeah.
So it's my mental health. If I didn't have my fitness in the morning, I get very grumpy.
I get it. Yeah. It's good. And that's why we should move our bodies, right?
Yeah.
Not to punish ourselves for what we did or didn't eat, And so that's what we want to learn and talk about today.
That's right.
I do want to disclaimer before we get started, and I'm sure you've seen from the title, we are going to discuss pediatric obesity or childhood obesity or however you look at it today. So just know that going forward, whether you have little ears in the room, right? Or whether you're not okay with this conversation. We will trust that I will handle this with great care and that we are here to learn together and consider. And that is all, because education is key and you make whatever choice works for you. Okay. But we need to have the knowledge so that we can decide what to do with it. And that's the goal. Okay. So let's invite in our first guest. Welcome, Jen, to the Plus Sides Podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you
We're
so much.
glad to have you. I love your content. Jen makes amazing supportive content about her journey on TikTok. Are you on other channels too, or other?
TikTok for the most part, just getting into YouTube a little bit.
Good. All right, well, we will put your YouTube handle and all the things people can track. Your content's so good. It broaches so many difficult topics in such a kind and caring way, and I love it. And I've been on the journey 2.5 years, and I watch your content. It's great. So, I actually didn't know you when you got bananaed. I didn't even know you then.
That was a tough time.
You can say the word ban here. It's okay.
You started a new account, and you were like, "Well, I'm not going to stop." And I was like, "Hey, who are you? What you doing?"
You can say the word ban. You can say ban here. It's okay.
Right.
This is a safe space.
That's right. On YouTube, you can say all the things. It's fantastic.
Love it. Love it.
Free speech and shit.
I say it on TikTok anyway and just hope I don't get in trouble. So that's where we are.
But that's what we call it, right? We had a massive ban that happened, and many creators got their accounts, but there were many that didn't. And that was weird. And that's content coming to you soon on this channel, by the way. That's how that went down. But regardless, that's when I found Jen, and I love her content. And so I want to give you the space. Kat and I are conversationalists, so we're like interrupters. So we go on mute to let you. Well, if you want to talk, I can let you sync. But
let Bub talk too. Bub's
my podcast host. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we want you to take the space and tell your story and anything else that you want to share as well. And we're gonna go on mute now.
Okay. So I have struggled with the disease of obesity as long as I can remember. Like Kim shared at the beginning of this, she started with Weight Watchers at 8. That is a very similar story to mine. I remember having my tonsils out at 6. I was always a really small kid. I had my tonsils out, and within a year, I just gained so much weight, and I didn't know what to do with that because I was an active kid. It just kind of took a turn at that point. So as young as I can remember, I was going with my mom to Weight Watchers meetings under the guise that we were there for her, but I knew why we were really there, especially when we'd go home and I'd have to eat all those foods, and I'd see her secretly writing down the points at that point in that book that they had, and all the snack wells in the house, and all my food at school was different than other kids. Like I knew it was for me. I knew it was for me. And we tried camps during the summer to lose weight. They had me in hospital programs where I would go every day after school and on weekends to run on the treadmill and then try out healthy snacks to try to incorporate them into my life. And nothing worked. No matter how hard I tried, nothing worked. And in the middle of all this, kids are horrible sometimes. They're so mean. And I was bullied and tortured. And oddly enough, my biggest bullies were family members that were in school with me. And it was like you'd think they'd be there to protect you, and they weren't. They kind of made it worse. And they were the popular, handsome boys, and they'd target the pudgy little cousin, So my self-esteem never really grew. It just kind of stayed stunted as this little girl that was constantly looking for validation and attention my entire life. So my weight kept increasing. And when I was 19, I remember my parents coming to me, my mom specifically, and telling me I was going to have weight loss surgery. It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't, this is what I think you should do. It is, this is what you are doing. And with the broken self-esteem that I always had, it was kind of like, okay, mom, let's do it. I had no concept that I was an adult and didn't have to. So I had that surgery, and that surgery changed the trajectory of the rest of my life, because back then, it was a long time ago, there wasn't the preparation that there is now, like with the psych evaluations and the nutrition meetings. It was kind of just like, all right, you're physically healthy, you're booked for surgery if you can afford it or your insurance covers it. So I was not mentally prepared at all for what that was going to look like. So I have this surgery, and food was taken away from me. I didn't have that anymore. I remember ordering a pizza and crying, looking at this pizza because I wanted it so bad, but physically couldn't eat it. So, and I'll never forget that, because in that moment, it was just kind of like, wow, like, yeah, it took the physical away, but mentally I was tortured. It was like literal mental torture. And I ended up developing an addiction to opiates after that surgery. And that took 10 years of my life, 10 years of my life. And I lost weight, but did I lose weight because I was addicted to opiates, or did I lose weight because of the surgery? I'll never know. I'm probably a little bit of both. So I end up going into recovery. I've been clean for 11 and a half years now. Life is good in that regard. But all that weight I lost when I got clean, I started eating, and I didn't treat anything inside me. At that point, the surgery had been so long ago, my stomach had stretched. I just ate and ate and ate. I think I was 350 when I had the weight loss surgery. When I got down to probably close to 200. And then when I got clean again, started slowly creeping back up. So I ended up getting on a GLP-1 medication. I was so naive to GLP-1 medications when I first started. I had very minimal information just from people around me. Like my fiance is on Mounjaro for type 2. My mom is on Mounjaro for type 2. I saw them losing weight, but it didn't connect that was what it was. Like to me, that was a diabetic medication that they were on and they were losing weight. So I started researching it, and then Zepbound came to market, and I'm like, okay, like, maybe I can get on this. So I went to the doctor and I was like, I'd like to get on this medication. Okay, fine. Great. And then my insurance doesn't cover it. So I'm like, well, that's just shot down my last hope. Like I really thought this was my last hope, because I had tried everything my entire life. Now, in the middle of this, before the weight loss surgery, after the weight loss surgery, I had been a member of Weight Watchers probably as long as I was legally allowed to be a member of Weight Watchers. Like I would pay for that app even when I wasn't using it for years. I think that 6 months ago was the first time I canceled the app after a decade. And I hadn't used it in God knows how long because I was so scared to take it off my phone. And it wasn't even like I was utilizing it. But so I end up going on social media and finding out about telehealth and Compound and getting involved with the telehealth. And when I started GLP-1 medications, it finally clicked in my head that I could have the benefit that the weight loss surgery gave me without the mental torture. It took that mental torture away from me because not only was I had a shut off switch suddenly to not eat as much, but I wasn't obsessively, compulsively thinking about eating. And that was where it was like a totally different scenario for me. Now, all this backstory leads to where we are at with my daughter, because in the middle of all this, my daughter started struggling with mental illness, paralyzing anxiety and depression. Her weight was also increasingly getting more difficult to deal with for her. And the doctor's answers were the same answers they had been to me my whole life. Eat less, move more. You need to cut out carbs and exercise. That was always the answer. So when she went to the pediatrician and the doctor mentioned her weight, it was, you need to make sure that she eats less carbs and moves more. Like that was their solution to everything. So with that, beyond the weight though, her mental health was what I was really concerned with. And she had started self-harming, and it got to a very scary place where the self-harm was progressively getting worse. The pediatrician had her on psych meds, which was managing the self-harm, but increasing her impulsivity with other behaviors. So it was kind of like we were begging, I don't even remember the phrase, but we were giving a little bit here to get a little bit here. And it was just not like, it wasn't even the lesser of two evils at a certain point. Like this kid who was this innocent little girl wasn't self-harming anymore, but she was trying to sneak out her window at 12 to go meet a boy. Like that's where we had gotten, you know? So as I'm on my GLP-1 journey, I'm watching my daughter's weight increase. I'm watching her mental health struggle. I'm watching her home and like seeing a physical representation of the way food noise has acted in my life and her. I started thinking like, so I started this medication and my mind has been so calm. Like I love that they're studying this medication for addiction. I love it. Sorry, I knew that was going to happen. Stop it. I'm muting for a second. Hold on.
Oh, Bubs.
I have my little yippies just the same.
Hold on one sec.
It's no problem.
Oh, the Bubs.
We'll just talk while she's gone.
I know, the Bubs.
It's so good.
Listen, he has a house to protect.
Yes, he does. Like he's looking out for you, Jen.
Sorry, my fiance walked in all creepy slow to not interrupt, not knowing that the dog was going
creepy slow fiance.
Yeah, right? Oh,
creepy slow.
Yes. So in the middle of all this, like I'm watching these same things that I've struggled with my whole life come out in my daughter. And I realized that if this medication has quieted my mind as much as it has, maybe it would help her. So I start researching that. I start researching the way that in this, I had to fight her pediatrician to do a panel of hormones and insulin tests. They did not want to do that because they were so stuck on it was the way she was eating and her lack of exercise. So we have her insulin levels tested. They come back 5 times higher than they should have for her age. They say, well, she has insulin resistance, most likely has PCOS. She needs to eat less and move more. And I'm like, that's your only solution to this? Your only solution? So and then I said to the pediatrician, what about GLP-1 medications? Nope. So I started doing my own research, printing journal articles, like researching everything on how gut health can affect mental health. And I'm like, there's something to this here. Like there's something to this. So it's very difficult to find, especially in my state, but everywhere, pediatric doctors that will treat with GLP-1 medications. It's like next to impossible, because when I'm researching in Connecticut, it was the local children's hospital that has a year-long wait, or a pediatric endocrinologist, which have a very long wait unless you have a referral, which the pediatrician was not willing to give me. So I start looking at telehealth, and I know I have a exclusion on our insurance policy already from the situation that I went through. So I'm like, how are we going to do this? We need to do this. So I kept at it. And it took probably 3 months to finally get a provider to treat her. We started with one provider. Now we're with a different provider, only for cost purposes. Like, the first provider was wonderful. It was just the cost was less. And my daughter's been on since May. She is down 22 pounds. She has not self-harmed one time since she started. Not one time. This was a kid who would isolate in her room, paralyzing depression. We have dropped down twice as much. We have dropped down her psych meds in half. She was 12 when she started. She's 13 now. So she's down half on her psych meds. She was in therapy when we started this 4 days a week between groups and therapy. She is now down to once a month therapy, almost at the point of being discharged. Like, it's like night and day. But the one thing I want to say about this is that we never, ever talk about her weight. Ever. She knows she takes a medication to treat her insulin resistance, and that there is a side effect of weight loss. If she doesn't want to weigh, she doesn't have to weigh. I've never made it about weight with her, because I don't want her to feel the way that I felt growing up sitting in those Weight Watchers meetings. It's been about health. It's been about mobility. If she wants crumble cookies, I'm getting her crumble cookies. You know what I mean? Like, I am not depriving her of a thing, because I never want her to think this is a punishment, like, ever. So I'm very careful with the way I navigate this with her, because I'm trying to do things differently than the way it was done with me. So one thing I did when we started her on this was I went through the house and we went shopping together, and I said, on this medication, if you eat things that are higher in protein, you're going to feel better. So let's go pick some stuff you might want. Robert Irvine's protein bars are her favorite. She says they taste like candy bars. It's an alternative to a candy bar, So we do have alternative options.
Note to self then.
Yeah.
Grocery store.
Right? Target has great protein finds, best protein finds. But so we're on this journey together, and she knows just enough where she can be proud of herself and be body positive at the same time as getting healthy. And that has been my goal with her the entire time, was to give her what I struggled to get growing up. So she's doing great. She's on 1.7 of Semaglutide right now. And I could not be more proud of this kid's progress. I just couldn't be. So.
Awesome. I'm so, and like
Wow,
I said,
wow.
I followed your content for quite a while, and I've seen updates on, and I love the way you handle it with your daughter. And Kat and I both, we struggle with childhood obesity for sure, and food stuff and Weight Watchers and all the things. And I think at the time, my mom, she just thought she was doing what was best, right? She would always say, like, this is an opportunity for you to learn how to eat. Let me teach you how to eat. And I think that's the thing with Weight Watchers. And I'm very outspoken about Weight Watchers. And I know there are other people that think it's the best and it works great for them. But ultimately, in my opinion, because they're not telling you what equals these points, it's this weird club, and it's the diet you have to be on forever, because you don't know what to eat without it. And you don't want to cancel the plan, because what if you don't know what to eat, or what do you get sick of what you're eating? Like, you need to know, you know what I mean? And I don't like the mind fuckery of that. Sorry, mom and dad. But I'm trying to say less bad words. My dad asked me to. But I don't like that. And I don't like people thinking they have to have it. Do you know what I'm saying?
No.
You want it? I don't have any problem with that. If it's your choice and you choose it, that's fine. I just don't want you to feel like you have to, or that you've done anything wrong. And so that's why I talk a lot about it. You know what I mean?
I think one of my biggest mistakes with my daughter was Weight Watchers was all I knew.
Yeah, girl.
And when they started the Curbo program a few years back, we had her in that Curbo program very briefly, and she hated it. It was the stoplight Curbo. They've since gotten rid of the program, but it was KURBO, and it was based on a stoplight system. So red light foods you could have very few of a week. Yellow lights were moderation. Green lights, eat as much as you want. And
Yeah.
it was a tracking thing where you had to track the
Right.
foods. She hated it. And we lasted like a month and she's like, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, fine, you don't have to.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Row Body Program. If you've been following along on my GLP-1 journey, you know that managing weight and metabolic health is a huge part of what I advocate for. Row's approach combines GLP-1 medications and then personalized support, giving you a tailored solution to help you take control of your health. And it's more than just weight loss. It's about finding the balance and the support that you need for long-term sustainable change. If you're ready to take the step, you can go over to row.co/plus-sides with a Z and see how Row can support your journey. That's row.co/plus-sides. I'll link it here in the show notes. You're not alone. It's not your fault. Yeah.
But like you said, Kim, I think as a parent, you do the best you can with what you have and what you knew.
True.
Yeah.
So at that point, like I did what I knew, but I got to the point where I'm just like, I am doing to her what was done to me sitting in that room when I was a little kid. We're not doing this anymore.
Right.
You know, that was the difference between me and my mom. I stopped it a little bit quicker than she did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we know more, right? And that's the whole thing with the generations, right? Is we learn more, we know more. And, I think I have a lot of grace for my mom. And even now she's on a GLP-1 and she talks about it, and I've had her on the show for bonus content. And, and she had the realization of the no food noise, right? That's such a big deal for so many of us, And I think that that's when it clicks, right? And whenever I'm like, having someone come on the podcast and they're a creator and I kind of see them just starting out and I'm like, oh, I kind of like their vibe. Like, I feel like that they're going to realize it's about health, not weight. They're going to realize it. I'm waiting for that realization. And a lot of people don't have it until they're a few doses in. And then they'll go, my God, it wasn't my fault. Oh my God, it wasn't my fault. Right. And I think arguably we can talk about what is this misregulation that we have? Is it genetic? Is it from our disgusting food? Like what? Probably everything, right? It's a lot of different factors, and I think it's good for us to know what those factors are and be able to understand them and understand why this is a disease. And that's the thing is I do think that like in order to really buy into the fact, right, that this isn't your fault, right? And for people to be able to heal, you got to buy into the fact that it's a disease. And there's 2 decades of data to show that it is, we know now. And I think that's important, and I feel like you do a lot with your content. And I love that you're sharing your daughters, especially with the mental health piece. I saw this article that Mike was talking about the other day. And he was saying that they were talking about kind of how TikTok has changed health and the way we talk about health. And one of the specific things was mental health, right? And how much more open people are about it and the journeys that they share and the connections, communities that they make on TikTok,
Absolutely.
And I think that's very true. And not just, and of course they mentioned Ozempic in the article, but I think that's so true. And I think that it does give us an opportunity. Hopefully somebody buys the technology before it gets banned, but it gives us an opportunity to talk about things that are hard conversations. Right. And the idea of putting our kids on anything is a hard conversation. You know what I mean? And like, whether it's for mental health, right? Or whether it's for weight or whether it's for insulin, anything, like none of us want our kids to have to be on medicine at all. That's not what we want. We want them to feel good and be healthy and and I feel like that in your content a lot. So I thought you were perfect for this episode.
Thank you.
And Bubs too.
Bub got locked out of the room now.
Yes, Dixie's out of the room
Poor
too.
Bubs
Usually
left
I'll make
out.
a little cameo. Oh no, I thought I saw a little fluffy thing. No, she's not here. Just kidding. Okay. Let's find into our doctor guest because we have lots of questions. Kat and I have some that are prepared, but I think it's an opportunity for you to ask questions too. It's meant for us all to learn from each other. And then hopefully people will learn from us. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, hello, Dr. Zena. How are you? Oh, you're on mute.
On mute. There we go.
There you go.
Hello. How are you ladies?
I'm good. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So obviously I think you know what we're kind of doing, but I would love if you could tell our audience, maybe don't follow you on social yet, a little bit.
I follow on Instagram.
Oh, you do good.
Oh,
that's great.
That's awesome.
And how you help people. We like to know who you are and how you help.
Yeah. So I'm Dr. Zinal Rufay. I'm a pediatrician, general pediatrician, and also a pediatric obesity medicine specialist. I got extra board certification in 2021, and I practice in a private practice in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan. And I am happy to be here to talk about all things childhood obesity. It's a real passion of mine. I'll never forget when I discovered all of this information and learned that there was a board certification in obesity medicine. I was like, what's obesity medicine? I never heard of such a thing, because I'm thinking back, I graduated in 2007. So a lot of this information is new. Like, I never knew this in medical school. And I'm like, I'm pretty smart. I thought I knew everything, but so much has happened and evolved in the last, 15 to 20 years. And not every doctor knows about all this stuff. So when I figured out about this and I learned, and I was going through my own personal journey and my journey with my own kids, it was like a light went off and I was like, I have to know all about this and I have to learn. And it was so rewarding and so like kind of validating just to know that, like, yeah, okay, the body's just working differently. It isn't just a matter of willpower and calories in and calories out, because that's what was fed to me even as a provider, as a medical provider. And that's what I'm supposed to keep regurgitating to all the families, And I'm like, this can't be right. There has to be something more to it.
Yeah.
So learning all of that stuff just really just was like, this is it. So this is what I like to do now.
Well, I love it. And I'm so glad that I feel like it's coming around. And it's interesting because like we were recording stuff for a documentary, like because we think over time this is going to be a thing, right? And we went and did like interviewing people on the street. And well, the street, it was Ponce City Market, but but in Atlanta, and nobody knew what we were talking about. And we were like GLP-1s. And so finally I was like, okay, we need to simplify this. And I was like, how do you feel about people taking Ozempic to lose weight? Right. And so we had to like take it down. Ultimately, that's when people knew what it was. And almost everybody was like, I don't think it's good. They're taking it from the diabetics. Almost everybody. And then eventually I have a point. Eventually we had someone come on and was like, actually, I'm in school right now learning about this. And even she didn't, know as much as we do, but we do, in all fairness, we do a podcast with experts and ask them lots of questions. So that's why all reason we knew it, but she knew more. And so I was encouraged that she was in school and that this discussion and this education was being had now, because hopefully when my child, if he ever does have to deal with this, he won't have to suffer. That's the goal, right? We don't want our kids to suffer. So I'm just really glad. I'm glad that we have, and I'm glad that we have more and more. I didn't even know, honestly. And I have obesity and had it as a child, right? I didn't even know that there's actually weight loss surgery for children
Pediatric,
who have obesity. I didn't even know it was a thing, but it is. And we learned it in our first season. We had Dr. Rosen, who's a surgeon. He doesn't operate on kids, but specifically, and he was talking to us about it. And like, we learned about Prader-Willi's, we learned about all these different things and how sometimes they have to go there. And so I hope we can talk more about that today. We have lots of questions kind of queued up, so I'll get ahead of myself.
Yeah.
But Kat, I believe it's your turn. Sorry.
I got excited. All right. We're excited. So we're focusing, of course, on childhood obesity this evening, and we want to make sure that we cover all the things in the land. But I always want to get this out in every episode, all the live long day. Let's chat about insulin resistance and PCOS and why they're like besties. And additionally, how early can it develop in our kids if it does?
Yeah. Nice.
That's a really good question. Yeah. So PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, is a combination of excess androgens and ovulatory dysfunction. And there's specific criteria to diagnose it. I don't know how specific. Do you guys want me to get like,
yeah, get it.
These are the diagnostic criteria kind of thing? Okay. So the most accepted criteria is called the Rotterdam criteria, which you have to have two out of the following three features. One is hyperandrogenism, which is like an excess of the masculine type hormones in the body. You have to have oligo, which is infrequent, or anovulation, which is like not ovulating. So like having very irregular periods or no periods, and polycystic ovaries on ultrasound. That's kind of the accepted. So 2 out of those 3 criteria would meet the criteria for PCOS. To get to your point about for children or adolescents and like when can you diagnose it, it's a little bit trickier just because there are certain features that come with PCOS, like acne, treatment-resistant acne, weight gain can be part of it, hirsutism, which is excess hair growth and certain distributions on the body. Some of those things happen naturally in adolescence. Irregular periods, normal for girls. Like in the first 2 years after starting puberty or going through puberty and having your first period, it's not uncommon for you to miss periods or have irregular periods within that first 2 years after you start. So generally, we don't typically diagnose PCOS in females, adolescents, until about 2 years post having their first period.
Mhm.
When you're 2 years out and you're still pretty irregular, or if you do find on ultrasound, if you do an ultrasound, that's when we can start really piecing it together and say, this looks like PCOS. So is it there all along? Maybe, yeah, probably, but we can't really get to diagnosing it until a
Just
little
don't
bit
know enough
later
about
in
it yet, I
adolescence.
think.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like
Absolutely.
that's the same with like adults. If I don't know enough about it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I went years. Nobody said anything to me.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
obesity tends to go with it too.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
just
insulin resistance.
resistance.
They
Yeah.
say about 50% of patients with PCOS may have obesity and insulin resistance. So not everyone with PCOS will have obesity and or insulin resistance,
Yeah.
but at least about 50% will. So it's a pretty strong chance of it happening.
Yeah.
And, there's a big genetic tendency for it as well. So if you have a parent or, in your family or mom or aunt or someone else who has been diagnosed with PCOS, you have a higher chance of possibly having it in your daughter or in the child. And then there's environmental factors too. So it's kind of considered like we call it the 2-hit hypothesis, where you may have a genetic predisposition, and then there's some environmental factors that can make it manifest itself. And those could be things that happen in utero. So it's not even after the fact. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of discussion as to what it could be. But there might be in utero factors, right after delivery, things in our environment, maybe what we're eating, who knows? There's a lot of different theories out there.
Yeah.
But then if you do have insulin resistance, it just feeds the fire into all of this. So in the ovaries, you have an imbalance of these hormones, and then the insulin. If you have insulin resistance, the insulin's like, hey, I'm just going to make that imbalance even worse. I'm going to cause even more inflammation and make everything more irregular. So it almost becomes this vicious cycle that keeps happening and getting worse and worse over time.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
They are
so
best
treating
things,
insulin
right?
resistance can treat the PCOS as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
feel
feel like it's hard too, because when they're that age, when they're younger, it's not like they're getting regular blood work. They're not going to a gynecologist to be tested, so I think it's so
they're not
hard.
sexually active.
Yeah.
At 12, it's like, so we don't know. And it just continues to get worse and worse. And then years later, we're like, oh, well, I guess now we can deal with it.
Yeah.
My
And
daughter
some of
was
the
having
hormones.
terrible periods and they just put her on birth control. Like that was the solution,
That's usually the first stage. Pediatricians tend to be not so invasive. We're very much like, in the adult world, I have parents all the time like, well, aren't you going to run a panel of tests just every year? And I'm like, we don't really do that in pediatrics. Like we run tests if there's a problem, we start looking for it.
Yeah.
But we don't just willy-nilly order things because it's painful for the kids. And then it's like, what do I do with that information? Is it going to just create more worry? So like for the hormones, sometimes in, puberty times, you're going to have an abnormal balance of your hormones. Like that's normal for that puberty time. And so that's why we don't jump to ordering labs too early, but definitely after 2 years of having had a period, if we're having issues, we need to start looking into it at that point.
I get that. Yeah. And I think like I've had other doctors say before that I said, well, do you test for insulin resistance? And they're like, well, if you have insulin resistance or you have obesity or you have type 2 diabetes, I'm going to treat it the same way. Like,
True.
and so but I think that like from a patient perspective, we like to know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it does help us with a certain amount of understanding about how our disease is and how it's working, and how the medicine works on treating the disease. You know what I mean? I think that's something that people miss so often in the media. And it drives me crazy is why would we take the most expensive medication, right? That's in the most scarcity, that has the most judgment, right? If it was just about eating less, like that's, we would take Phentermine. It's cheap. We could get, you know what I'm saying? Like, but we need this because it does address the underlying dysfunction. You know what I mean? And so I feel like people they just totally miss it. It drives me insane. And freaking Opus had 3 specials. I was making TikToks. I'm like, Oprah, you're missing the insulin resistance. One day, guys, 2025. You want to meet Oprah? Look at that.
Yeah. Still that bias. I even had a pediatric GI specialist, I went to talk with them to tell him about my clinic, and
Yeah.
he was like, "I will never write for those medications," the GLP-1s he was referring to. I was like, "Why?" And he really didn't have a good answer. It's just you didn't know about it, right? And hadn't really learned about it, and there's not enough research about it. I'm like, it's been around a long time. Like it's okay. Like we know enough about it. And
Yeah.
I was sad. I was like, really? Like you're one of the specialists. I refer patients who have like liver inflammation, from fat infiltration. I'm like, I thought you were an ally and you know what's going on, but not everybody knows.
Yeah.
And Jen,
Yeah.
sad to hear how much you had to work to get to someone who could help you and your daughter out. But you're right. It is definitely usually doctors associated with hospital systems, very academic centers, and there's a very long wait list for that. The general pediatricians can write for these things, but they're just unfamiliar with them and they're scared. And I remember being in that point too. But now that I've prescribed it more, I'm more comfortable with it. I just hope over time we can get more and more people just to be okay with it and understand how it's helpful.
Well, and they're testing the boundaries a lot, testing it even younger and younger children, right? And I think, even I'm kind of like, but I also am kind of like, we need to know. And if we're testing it, like we got to know. I don't want our kids to suffer.
We have to know. Yeah.
I mean, it's important.
Well, I think like Kim said, like when you're the patient, you want to know why you are or feeling the way you are. When you're the parent, you absolutely need to know. Like I needed to know why this was going on with my daughter because nothing was making sense to me. So I think that like we said, the kids don't have those panels ran constantly. So when I went into that appointment, I was like, everything I read, I want her tested for. Like I will pay for it. It's whatever we need to do. I need to see this. And like her testosterone levels were off. There was so many varying things that the pediatrician we had at the time is not our pediatrician now, but not because I said we're not doing this with you, because I understood she didn't know. Like she was very honest with me. Like I won't prescribe this because I just don't feel comfortable because I don't know. Like I can't knock her for that,
Right.
But she ended up leaving the practice to go on maternity leave. And the new doctor they put us with, when I went to that appointment, I went with all those journal articles I printed out, especially the JAMA Pediatrics article that talked about mental health. And I was like, we are months and months in now. She is doing great. I need to know if compound goes away that you will prescribe brand and I will pay out of pocket. I just will. At this point,
it's about health, not weight.
Because it's about health and my daughter's quality of life. And I don't care how much it costs. If I have to get a second job, I will. That's where I'm at.
In our community about taking pictures of our feet.
Yeah, whatever.
Why not?
Whatever it takes. But that's
the
whole thing is nobody is saying when we I just want everybody to understand like the value of the statement that Jen is saying, right? Is she's saying that it's not about her kid being smaller. So she's lost 20-something pounds, right? Yeah. It's not what it's about. It's the amazing quality. And guys, these years, that's something Dr. Rosen said when he was on our show in the beginning. These years, these 12,
crucial.
13, 14, these are crucial years that you developing your self-esteem, right? Yeah. And your, just sense of self in general, right? Like, and being treated cruelly and ostracized and not being able to maybe do the sports that you want to do or anything like that. Those are just so important to the mental, I would just say like growth of you, right? And I'm sure you can that, Dr. Zena, but I think that
that's one of our good questions.
Yeah. How much of our weight is in our control? One of our doctors one time said that about 70% is something that we can actually control, that everything else is based on genetics, environment, whatever else. There's only a certain amount that we can actually have control over. I'd love to know your take on that.
Yeah, that's very true. Genetics, there's 30 to 40% is a determinant, right? So that's a pretty big proportion. Like that's what you got. You got to work with it. But then there's also the environmental piece. So you have the genetic setup, but in what environmental triggers kind of make everything show up from your genes. So that isn't always in our control. Even the environmental factors, they say, well, just, buy these groceries, buy this, buy that. And it's like, yeah, I have 2 kids in middle school and an elementary school child. And I can maybe make my choices of what I bring into my home, right? But they're going to go to school and they want to be with their friends and they're going to be kids, right? Like, and they're going to go to birthday parties. I'm not going to restrict them from, hanging out with their friends. But at the same time, they're just exposed to it all the time, things all the time that, like, could we do better in schools of what we're offering our kids? Maybe we can stand to make some tweaks, make things a little bit better. Instead of cutting out recess, let's put it back in a little bit more, just give them opportunities for movement. Like those things are the environmental things that aren't in our control either, right? So the environment isn't totally in our control. Our genetics aren't totally in our control. So there are a few things that we can do, but we can't control everything. And that's the bias that still exists in the world, is that weight is 100% in your control.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm learning, like, as I talk to more people and hear their opinions, someone who's, I call them naturally thin people. So if you grew up in a naturally thin household or naturally thin yourself, you don't get it. You just don't understand the mental chatter and what it's like to be someone who lives in a larger size body, and what comments you get and judgments you get and all of those kind of things. They just don't have a frame of reference. So I don't hold that against them anymore. Like I used to be like, you're so biased, but it's like, yeah, you're biased because maybe you don't know. Yeah. But now we have platforms like yours, right? Where we can do more education and we can get the information out there and we can learn and we can do better. And we are definitely compared to when we were children and what we had to go through to what we exist now, we've come leaps and bounds. There's still more work to do, but we've definitely come a long way.
Hey, Plus-Siders. We're so glad that you were able to tune in for part 1 of the episode. Part 2 will be posted next week. We look forward to seeing you then. Have a great week. And remember, you're not alone. It's not your fault.
Want the fastest working GLP-1? For half the price, Ro now offers FDA-approved weight loss injections cheaper. With results you can see faster. Lose 15% of your weight with the formula from Eli Lilly that hits not 1, but 2 hormones to curb hunger and nausea. Weight loss faster. Confidence higher. Price cheaper. See if you qualify at ro.co/TV.
Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.